Our next list, unsexy players who will help you win. Let's take a look at the top 10 here, Matthew. And for those listening, we'll read them off real quick. James Conner, Alvin Kamara, Christian Kirk, Joe Mixon, Raheem Mostert, DeAndre Hopkins, Najee Harris, Brian Robinson Jr., Chris Godwin, and Devin Motor Singletary. Seems like the lone man right now in that Giants backfield.
All these guys, none of these guys have any buzz whatsoever, and they're sort of quote-unquote snoozy picks. Like, again, you draft Malik Neighbors in your draft, and everyone's be like, oh, yeah, Malik Neighbors, love him this year. You draft James Conner, no one's going like, oh, man, I wanted him. Like, these are all snoozy guys, but I will tell you, every single one of these players is going to outperform ADP. They're all values. They are unsexy players who will help you win. Let's talk about James Conner there for an example. We've talked about him a decent amount on this show. Last year, 4th among running backs in scrimmage yards per game. He averaged over 92 yards from scrimmage. And by the way, the Cardinals were much worse than they're going to be this year with a healthy Kyler Murray, the addition of Marvin Harrison. Suddenly, and Trey McBride is now a real threat. The human Dortch, Greg Dortch. Mark my words, Greg Dortch is going to have a year. They're suddenly there's a lot more weapons in that offense, and the running lane should be open for James Conner, who has had back-to-back seasons averaging over 17 touches per game. He's been a top 15 fantasy running back on a points per game basis in every year he's been in Arizona. And I know everyone's all excited. I get it. There's a little bit of an injury concern, but he's mostly stayed healthy the last couple of years. And so where James Conner is going in drafts is just criminal. Yeah,
I think the thing too with James Conner, because he's been around for a long time, people might not, if you're not watching Conner's games, he's gotten better. He's gotten better as a player. He was 4th last year in PFF grade. He was 3rd in the NFL in rushing yards per game. And he did that without having like a real quarterback situation for half the season. And again, like with running backs, having a rushing quarterback, even though it takes away some volume, it is just a cheat code in terms of taking a man out of the box, makes everyone's life easier. And also he's just a monster at the goal line as well, James Conner. So I think of all the running backs being drafted right now, he is the guy who has the most value.
He's a true 3-down back, and I know everyone loves Trey Benson. But like
seems a little far away right now, though. Didn't light the world on fire this summer.
He didn't, and by the way, after Trey Benson, it's like Amari DiMaccardo.
Right.
Like I mean,
they cut Michael Carter.
Right, and they cut Michael Carter. Like it's going to be his backfield, guys. It's going to be his backfield. He's going to get a ton of work, and you're going to look up once again at the end of the season. You're like, this running back that got drafted is like running back 23 is running back 14, and again, he will be somebody. He is an unsexy pick, but he will help you win your league.
Jay, we talked about the upside of Brian Thomas Jr. in Jacksonville's offense, but a guy that might not have upside, but is just reliable and good in fantasy, Christian Kirk, who lives in their slot and has been really good for a couple years now.
Yep. Again, deeply unsexy player because he's Christian Kirk. No one's excited to draft Christian Kirk. But the thing is with Brian Thomas, talk about the upside, like that's a projection. We haven't seen him on the field in a regular season NFL game before. We know exactly what Christian Kirk is. Christian Kirk will be the favorite to be the #1 wide receiver for Trevor Lawrence. They have that established connection. And also, like last year, Kirk was dealing with injuries. Lawrence was banged up every single week, it felt like. I think just on average, Lawrence is going to be healthier. Kirk is going to be healthier. That offense is just going to look better.
He played 11 fully healthy games last year. He had basically a 23% target share. And again, he played a lot out of position last year because of the injuries to Zay Jones. Like they had to play him on the outside. I've talked about this before on the show, but I'll bring it up once again. I spoke with Doug Peterson at the Combine. I specifically asked him about Kirk, and he's just like, we need him in the slot. That's where he's more, I'm paraphrasing here, but just, that's where we like to play him. That's where he's more comfortable. It's where we think we can have the most success with him. And so I think that's one of the reasons why they went out and get Brian Thomas. That's one of the reasons why they signed Gabe Davis as well. Let those guys play on the outside. Here's Kirk in the middle. Again, on a Jacksonville Jaguars offense that is going to be pass first, that is going to be fantasy friendly, is going to push the ball down the field. So Christian Kirk, very, very unsexy, but in 82% of his healthy games over the last 2 seasons, he's gotten at least 6 or more targets. Like there's just going to be a volume there and a floor of production with upside as well.
How about Chris Godwin? We want to talk about a value, Matthew. It feels like people are just maybe bored of Chris Godwin. I know Jalen McMillan had a nice summer, but this is still the Mike Evans and Chris Godwin.
And he's going to play more in the slot this year, which is his natural position as well. Each of the last 4 seasons where he's played at least 14 games, 120 targets, 80 or more receptions, over 1,000 yards. He was the only wide receiver last year with over 1,000 receiving yards and fewer than 3 touchdowns. Positive touchdown regression is coming. It just has to. It's not like he is allergic to the end zone. He just had a bad touchdown year last year as well. Remember, in 2023, he had a 23.5% target share. Like there is a connection there with Baker Mayfield. He got at least 6 targets in 14 to 17 games last year. I think people just, because of the lack of touchdowns and because Mike Evans had such resurgence last year and there was, Rachaad White was a big deal in fantasy, people just sort of forget about Chris Godwin. But he's a very talented wide receiver. There's still even though we like McMillan, it's a very narrow target tree. It is Evans and Godwin and Evans really, and McMillan's fine. He's the third wide receiver. Right. You'll get some Cade Otton in there and whatever, Rachaad White out of the backfield. But it's two main guys on what should be a competent to above average offense.
Yeah, and I think the upside for Godwin is that this team might just throw the ball more this year. Like last year, they ran Rachaad White into the ground for whatever reason. They had a negative pass rate over expected. There is scope that Godwin, and also Godwin, feels like Chris Godwin's 34 years old. He's 28 years old. He's not a super old dude. He is, he's 3 years younger than Tyreek Hill. So I think that Chris Godwin, he is going to be a source of slot receiver PPR production.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.